The Galactic Joy Index skyrocketed when humans introduced the concept of dance parties. Part 1. The emergency lights in the Galactic Council chamber had been flashing red for 3 hours. Ambassadors stood at the central podium, their crystalline body refracting the warning lights into nervous patterns across the walls. The holographic display behind them showed charts and graphs that all pointed in the same troubling direction, downward. The Joy Index has dropped another 2 points this quarter, announced, their voice carrying the harmonic resonance typical of. That makes 15 consecutive quarters of decline across 847 member species. A murmur rippled through the assembled delegates. The Chitter Collective, represented by a swarm of beings that moved and thought as one, buzzed with concern. The Whisperfolk, clouds of sentient gas contained in environmental suits, dimmed noticeably. Even the ancient Eternals, beings who had lived for and seen empires rise and fall, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "How is this possible?" demanded council member, a scaled reptilian whose species prided itself on logical thinking. "Our efficiency ratings are at an all-time high. Resource distribution is optimal. Conflicts have decreased by 63%. Every measurable indicator of civilization suggests we should be experiencing a golden age." Crystalline form flickered with what might have been frustration in a being made of living mineral. "That is precisely the problem. We have optimized everything. Work schedules, food distribution, living spaces, social interactions. Everything follows the most efficient patterns. And yet, something is missing." The chamber fell silent. It was the kind of silence that happens when everyone knows something is wrong but nobody knows how to fix it. The galactic community had spent 10,000 years perfecting their civilization. They had eliminated waste, reduced suffering, and created a universe where every being had exactly what they needed. But somewhere along the way, they had lost something they couldn't quite name. The chamber doors hissed open. Every head, appendage, and sensory organ turned to see who would interrupt an emergency session. Ambassador Maria hurried in, slightly out of breath, her human face flushed with what appeared to be exertion. She wore casual clothing by galactic standards, comfortable shoes, and carried what the assembled aliens recognized as a portable audio device. Sorry, I'm late," Maria said, sliding into the seat marked for Earth's delegation. "Traffic was terrible, and I had to stop and help this whose hovercart broke down, and then I couldn't find parking, and you know how it is." Actually, none of them knew how it was. Most species had long ago optimized their transportation systems to eliminate such inefficiencies. But humans were new to the galactic community, having only joined 2 years ago, and were still adjusting to civilized standards. Watched the human settle into her seat with a mixture of curiosity and something that might have been envy. They had been studying the human data files for weeks now, and the numbers made no sense. Humans scored average on nearly every metric. Their technology was adequate but not exceptional. Their military was sufficient for defense but not dominant. Their efficiency ratings were, frankly, mediocre at best. But their Joy Index readings were extraordinary. "Ambassador," said, their harmonic voice cutting through the lingering whispers, "perhaps your arrival is fortuitous. We were just discussing the joy deficit crisis. Your species may be able to provide insight." Maria blinked, looking confused. "The joy what now?" "The Joy Index," explained, pulling up a new holographic display. "It measures the overall happiness, satisfaction, and emotional of a population. As I mentioned, galactic-wide readings have been declining for nearly 4 years. However, human readings are anomalous." The display shifted to show Earth's Joy Index chart. The line didn't just climb upward, it spiked and jumped like a living thing. Several times, it exceeded the theoretical maximum that scientists had calculated was biologically possible. "Your people consistently register joy levels that should be impossible," continued. "In some cases, our measurement equipment has actually malfunctioned from the intensity. We need to understand how humans achieve this state. Maria stared at the chart, then at the hundreds of alien faces looking at her expectantly. I mean, we just live. We do stuff we enjoy, hang out with friends, listen to music, dance, eat good food, watch funny videos, that kind of thing. The Chitter Collective buzzed in their synchronized way. But these activities serve no productive purpose. They do not increase efficiency or output. Why engage in them? Because they're fun, Maria said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Fun, repeated slowly, as if testing an unfamiliar word. This is the cause of your elevated joy states. Well, yeah, I mean, life can't be all work and optimization and stuff. You need to let loose sometimes. Just do things because they make you happy, not because they're useful. The chamber erupted in confused chatter. The concept seemed almost radical to beings who had spent eliminating inefficiency from their lives. They conferred with each other in harmonic frequencies humans couldn't hear. The whisperfolk swirled in agitated patterns within their suits. An eternal named Ev, who had lived for over 1,800 years, rose to their considerable height. They moved with the calculated precision that came from centuries of practice, every gesture economical and purposeful. Ambassador, I have existed for longer than your entire civilization. In that time, I have never once engaged in an activity without purpose. I do not understand this concept of fun. Maria looked at the ancient being with something like sympathy. That's really sad, actually. You've lived almost 2,000 years and never had fun. I have fulfilled my duties. I have contributed to society. I have optimized my existence. What purpose would fun serve? Maria opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. How did you explain fun to someone who had never experienced it? It was like trying to describe color to someone who had never seen. She thought about her life back on Earth, dancing with her friends on Friday nights, her cousin's upcoming wedding, the feeling of a perfect song at the perfect moment, the joy of moving her body just because it felt good. An idea struck her, probably not a great one, but Maria had never been known for thinking things through. Okay, look, she said, standing up. I can't explain fun, you have to experience it. So here's what I'm going to do. This Friday night I'm inviting all of you to Earth, to Brooklyn specifically. My cousin's getting married and there's going to be a reception. You want to see how humans get such high joy index readings? Come to the party. The chamber fell silent again. This time it was the silence of beings trying to process something completely outside their frame of reference. A party, a social gathering with no apparent purpose beyond enjoyment. It seemed almost absurd. But they were desperate. The joy index continued to fall. Their civilizations were functioning perfectly and dying inside. If humans had somehow cracked the code to happiness, wasn't it worth investigating? Crystalline form shifted through several colors, indicating deep thought. Finally, they spoke. Very well, Ambassador. The Council accepts your invitation. We will attend this party and observe human joy production methods. Great, Maria said brightly. Fair warning, though, my family is a lot. My grandmother doesn't speak Galactic Standard. My uncle has strong opinions about politics. And my little cousins will probably want to touch all of you because you look cool. But the DJ is amazing, the food will be incredible, and I promise you'll have fun. If you can just, let yourselves. As the session adjourned, the delegates filed out in orderly lines, already preparing research protocols and observation equipment. They would approach this party as they approached everything, with scientific rigor and careful documentation. Maria watched them go and smiled to herself. They had no idea what they were in for. Brooklyn wedding receptions didn't follow protocols. They followed the music, the mood, and the moment. By Friday night, these carefully optimized aliens were about to discover what happened when efficiency took a backseat to joy. She just hoped the venue was insured, and that someone had warned her cousin about the guests, all 200 of them, from space. This was either going to be the greatest cultural exchange in human history or the most embarrassing, probably both. Part 2. The Silver Moon Reception Hall in Brooklyn had hosted many events over the years, but never anything quite like this. The owner, a practical woman named Mrs., had asked surprisingly few questions when Maria explained that there would be international guests at the wedding. Maria decided that intergalactic might have been too much information. The delegates began arriving at 7 o'clock, exactly on time because punctuality was a virtue shared across the galaxy. They came in shuttles that parked on the roof, which would definitely be a problem later, but that was future Maria's concern. Present Maria was too busy watching 200 aliens file into her cousin Jennifer's wedding reception. Ambassador led the way, their crystalline body carefully draped in what they believed was appropriate formal wear for human celebrations. They had researched extensively and arrived wearing what appeared to be 7 ties at once. The Chitter Collective had formed themselves into a vaguely humanoid shape and wore a single enormous suit jacket that covered the entire swarm. The Whisper Folk had decorated their containment suits with what looked like party streamers. Maria's grandmother, Nana, stood near the entrance greeting guests in the traditional way of Italian grandmothers everywhere, with cheek kisses and concerned comments about whether people had eaten. She took one look at the arriving aliens and simply shrugged. She had lived through a world war, 3 husbands, and the 1977 blackout. Aliens from space were just another thing. "You bring your friends, Mari?" she asked in her thick accent. "They look skinny. Come, come, I get you food." Before Maria could explain, Nana had already grabbed what appeared to be Eth's arm, which was actually a secondary sensory appendage, and was pulling the 1800-year-old Eternal toward the buffet table. Inside the reception hall, the culture clash was immediate and overwhelming. The DJ, a young man named who had seen the guest list and still decided his regular setup would be fine, was playing light background music. The decorations were tasteful, strings of lights, centerpieces with flowers, and a dance floor that glowed from beneath with soft blue light. The alien delegates immediately began setting up their equipment, the deployed measurement devices to track joy levels. The Chitter Collective released small observation drones that buzzed around the ceiling. A team of scientists, beings who looked like large floating brains in mechanical bodies, were taking notes on everything from the temperature to the ambient sound levels. "Welcome, honored guests," Jennifer, the bride, announced from near the head table. She had insisted on being told about the aliens, handled it better than expected, and had only screamed for about 15 seconds. "We're so happy you could join us for this celebration." Consulted their data pad. "Clarification, please. A wedding is a pair bonding ceremony. Why does it require a celebration involving food, music, and—" They gestured at the dance floor with confusion, that illuminated platform. Jennifer's new husband, different from the DJ, laughed. "Because getting married is amazing and we want a party about it. Speaking of which—" He nodded to DJ, who was apparently related to him somehow. Brooklyn families were complicated. The music changed. The gentle background melody cut off, replaced by something with a heavy bass beat that Maria recognized immediately. It was a classic, the kind of song that made it physically impossible for humans to stand still. Around the room, human guests reacted instinctively. Shoulders started moving, feet started tapping. The dance floor began to fill. The aliens watched in confusion as humans of all ages moved toward the glowing platform and began moving their bodies in seemingly random patterns. The movements didn't follow any obvious logic. They weren't synchronized. They served no apparent purpose. And yet, the joy readings on every device in the room immediately spiked. "Fascinating," murmured a scientist. "The humans are experiencing muscular contractions in response to auditory stimuli, but it appears voluntary. Are they experiencing seizures?" "That's dancing," Maria explained, appearing at side. "It's just moving your body to the music, however feels good to you." "But why?" asked, their crystalline form poolsing with the bass in a way that might have been accidental. Maria smiled. Because it's fun, come on, I'll show you. I do not think, began, but Maria was already pulling them toward the dance floor. This carefully optimized walking pattern broke down as they stumbled forward, their crystalline legs unsure of this irregular pace. On the dance floor, chaos reigned in the most beautiful way. Maria's aunts and uncles danced with the confidence of people who had attended hundreds of weddings and didn't care how they looked. Her younger cousins spun and jumped with wild energy. An elderly couple slow danced near the edge, lost in their own world. Just move, Maria told, raising her voice over the music. However the music makes you feel, there's no wrong way to dance. There must be an optimal pattern, started to say, but then the music shifted. The bass deepened. The rhythm became impossible to ignore, and something happened that would later describe in their report as an involuntary response to harmonic resonance that bypassed logical centers of thought. Their crystalline body began to sway, just a little at first, like a tree in a gentle breeze, then more. The vibrations from the bass traveled through their mineral structure, creating resonances that felt strange and wonderful and completely new. Around them, other aliens were experiencing similar revelations. The Whisperfolk discovered that they could move their gaseous forms in undulating patterns that matched the music. When they did, they created visible colors that swirled and danced in the air. The human guests cheered, thinking it was some kind of special effect. The Whisperfolk, encouraged, began moving with more enthusiasm. The Chitter Collective found that synchronized movement to a beat didn't disrupt their hive mind as they had feared. Instead, it enhanced the connection. Each individual insect moving in harmony with the others, all following the rhythm, created a sensation of unity that was somehow deeper than their normal state. They began creating patterns in the air, thousands of insects moving as one in response to the music. Even the dignified Eternals were affected. Eth, who had spent nearly two perfecting the art of purposeful movement, stood at the edge of the dance floor still clutching a plate of food that Nana had forced into their hands. They watched the chaos with the analytical mind that came from centuries of observation. Then Nana appeared again. "Why you not dancing?" she demanded, setting down her drink. Come, you too old, I too old, we dance together." "I am 1847 years old," Eth said with dignity. "I do not engage in purposeless physical activity." "Perfect," Nana declared, missing the point entirely. "You know what you doing then." She grabbed Eth's arm again, the actual arm this time, and pulled. For a being who weighed perhaps 90 pounds and stood barely 5 feet tall, she had surprising strength. Eth found themselves on the dance floor. Nana didn't ask permission or wait for agreement. She simply started moving, her elderly human body swaying to the music with the confidence of someone who had been dancing at weddings since before space travel was invented. She took Eth's hands and moved them in simple patterns, side to side, forward and back, nothing complicated. And something happened that Eth had not experienced in over 1800 years of existence. They felt joy. Not the quiet satisfaction of a duty performed well, not the intellectual pleasure of solving a complex problem. Pure, simple, uncomplicated joy. The music moved through their body. Their feet, which had only ever moved with calculated precision, began to follow patterns that made no logical sense but felt absolutely right. "See," Nana said, smiling up at the ancient alien. "You got it, just feel the music." Around the dance floor, similar scenes played out. Aliens who had spent their entire lives, some of them very long lives, in pursuit of optimization and efficiency, were discovering what it felt like to just let go. The created harmonic frequencies that synced with the music, turning themselves into living instruments. Despite lacking traditional bodies, made their mechanical frames bob and weave in time with the beat. DJ, who had been briefed that these were important international guests, but not that they were literally from other planets, was having the night of his life. The crowd was incredibly responsive. When he dropped the bass, The crystalline beings literally resonated. When he played something with a fast tempo, the insect swarm created aerial displays. He started mixing specifically for his unusual audience, watching their reactions, building toward bigger and bigger moments. Maria danced in the middle of it all, surrounded by humans and aliens alike, and watched as 2 years of careful diplomatic work paid off in the most unexpected way. The Joy Index monitors that the scientists had set up were going haywire. Several had simply maxed out and stopped recording, unable to measure joy levels this high. At midnight, when the reception was officially supposed to end, no one showed any signs of stopping. The human guests had long since accepted that they were partying with aliens and had decided that was actually pretty cool. The alien guests had discovered that dancing was possibly the best thing they had ever experienced. Mrs. the venue owner poked her head in, saw the crowd, saw that they were clearly having the time of their lives, and decided that maybe the place could stay open a little longer. As a slower song started playing and couples moved together on the dance floor, approached Maria. Their crystalline form was still vibrating gently with the residual music. "Ambassador," they said, their harmonic voice softer than usual, "I believe I am beginning to understand. This fun you spoke of, it is not about efficiency or purpose. It is about experiencing joy for its own sake." Maria smiled, slightly out of breath from dancing. "Now you're getting it." "How soon?" asked. "Can humanity teach this to the galaxy?" Part 3. 6 months later, the galactic community was barely recognizable. The change had started slowly, almost imperceptibly, like the first drops of rain before a storm. Now it was a deluge. Ambassador stood in what had once been the Grand Hall of Records a place of quiet study and careful documentation. Today it was something entirely different. The crystalline structures that made up the building resonated with bass frequencies, and hundreds of moved together in synchronized patterns, their bodies creating harmonies that no conventional instrument could match. They called it crystal resonance dancing, and it had become the most popular activity on the entire planet. A young approached, their form still shimmering with excitement from the dance session. "Ambassador, the joy readings from the last session exceeded our projections by 47%, and we're receiving requests from 17 other worlds for human dance instructors." Form pulsed with satisfaction. The change they had witnessed at that Brooklyn wedding had spread like wildfire across the galaxy. One species realized that joy didn't need to be earned or justified, that it could simply be experienced. There was no going back. The joy index wasn't just recovering, it was shattering every previous record. On the Chitter, the collective had developed what they called swarm flow. Millions of insects moving as one in intricate patterns set to music, creating living artworks in the sky that could be seen from orbit. The hive-mind connection, already strong, became something transcendent when they danced together. They had never felt so unified. The aquatic tide singers had built massive underwater dance halls where bioluminescent beings created light shows while they moved through the water. Their dance style was three-dimensional, using the entire water column, and humans who tried it with breathing equipment reported that it felt like flying through liquid stars. Even the Eternals, those ancient beings who had perfected purposeful movement were throwing themselves into dance with the enthusiasm of children discovering something new. Eth had become something of a celebrity among their people, teaching traditional human dances they had learned from Nana. The sight of thousand-year-old Eternals learning the electric slide had become a viral sensation across the galactic network. But it wasn't just about the dancing itself. Something deeper was happening. The joy index increase had brought other changes with it. Mental health facilities across the galaxy reported massive decreases in depression and anxiety. Therapists noted that patients who engaged in regular dancing showed remarkable improvements in mood and overall. Cooperation had reached unprecedented levels. It turned out that dancing together was a powerful bonding experience. The Aldebaran conflict, a territorial dispute that had simmered for decades, ended when diplomats from both sides attended the same dance party and discovered they both loved the same style of music. It was hard to hold a grudge against someone when you'd both been doing the cha-cha slide together at 3 in the morning. Maria had become one of the most sought-after diplomats in galactic history. She traveled from world to world, teaching the principles of dance parties, not the specific moves, because those varied wildly between species, but the philosophy behind it. The idea that you could do something just because it made you happy. That efficiency wasn't everything. That sometimes the most important thing you could do was let go and move to a good beat. She was currently on a diplomatic mission to Telos Prime, where the famously serious were struggling with the concept. They were tall, gray-skinned beings who prided themselves on intellectual pursuits and logical thinking. Teaching them to dance was proving challenging. "But what is the purpose?" asked Minister K for what felt like the 100th time. They stood in a specially prepared hall, music playing, but they remained rigidly still. "We understand that dancing increases joy levels, but why does moving in this particular way achieve this result? What is the mechanism?" Maria resisted the urge to sigh. She'd encountered this kind of resistance before. Some species had spent so long optimizing their existence that breaking free felt almost frightening. "The purpose is the joy itself. You're trying to understand dancing like it's a math problem. It's not. It's more like laughter. Do you analyze why something is funny before you laugh at it?" "Yes," Kay said seriously. "We have comprehensive studies on humor response patterns." Maria did sigh this time, then she had an idea. "Okay, new approach, you know what? Humans have a saying, fake it till you make it, just move. Any way at all, doesn't matter how it looks. Just move your body in time with the music, even if you feel ridiculous doing it. Can you do that, as an experiment?" They exchanged glances, an experiment they could understand. "Very well," Kay agreed. "We will attempt this moving as a scientific trial." Maria signaled to the DJ, a human named Carlos who had been touring with her as part of the cultural exchange program. He started with something gentle, a slow rhythm that was easy to follow. They began to move, stiffly and awkwardly, like robots attempting to imitate organic movement. But then Carlos did what good DJs do. He read the room and adjusted. The tempo increased slightly. The bass became more pronounced, and slowly, gradually, they began to loosen up. Their movements became less calculated. One of them did something that might have been a spin. Another actually smiled. By the time Carlos dropped into a high-energy track 20 minutes later, they were genuinely dancing. They had invented their own style, something that involved a lot of arm movements and precise footwork that was uniquely theirs, and their joy readings were climbing. Kay found themselves next to Maria, both of them moving to the music. "This is remarkable," the minister said, slightly breathless. "I feel lighter, as if a burden I did not know I was carrying has been lifted." Maria smiled. "That's the magic of it. You spend so much time being serious and responsible and efficient. Sometimes you need to just let all of that go and be silly for a while." "Silly," Kay repeated, testing the word. "Yes, I believe I am being silly, and it is." They paused, searching for the right word in galactic standard. "It is wonderful." 3 weeks later, Maria was back on Earth for a brief visit home. She found herself sitting in the same silver moon reception hall where this had all started, attending another wedding. Her aunt's neighbor's daughter was getting married, and somehow Maria had ended up invited. Brooklyn families worked like that. She sat at a table with, who had become a close friend over the months of working together. They was getting better at understanding human social cues and had even learned to enjoy Earth food, though they still looked like a walking crystal chandelier. "The council is planning to make dance party facilitation an official diplomatic tool," told her over the sound of the DJ warming up. "And there is discussion of creating a new position, Galactic Commissioner of Joy. Many believe you should hold that position." Maria nearly spit out her drink. "Me? I'm not qualified for that. I just introduced you guys to dancing. You did more than that, said, their harmonic voice sincere. You reminded the galaxy that joy matters. For thousands of years, we optimized everything except happiness. We created perfect efficiency and forgot to ask why we were being efficient in the first place. Humans never forgot. You always knew that the point of life wasn't just to survive, but to experience joy. On the dance floor, the party was starting to heat up. Maria could see several aliens who had come to Earth specifically to experience authentic human dancing. A whisperfolk was teaching Maria's grandmother some kind of aerial light display move. A young Eternal was attempting the Macarena with a group of flower girls. We're not perfect, you know, Maria said. Humans, we've got our own problems. We're messy and inefficient and we make terrible decisions sometimes. Yes, agreed. But you are also joyful. Despite all your imperfections, or perhaps because of them, you have maintained this connection to simple happiness. You dance at weddings. You sing in showers. You laugh at jokes that are not very funny. You experience joy in small moments. That is what the galaxy needed to learn. The music changed to something irresistible, one of those universal songs that made every human in the room move toward the dance floor. Maria stood up, extending a hand to, "Come on, enough serious talk. Let's dance." 3 months later, the Grand Galactic Council convened for the ceremony of recognition. It was the most prestigious event in galactic society, held once every decade to honor those who had made significant contributions to the advancement of civilization. The chamber was packed with dignitaries from across known space. Every major species had sent representatives. The ceremony was traditionally a solemn affair. Recipients would approach the podium, accept their awards, give brief speeches thanking various institutions and individuals, and then return to their seats. Everything was timed precisely. Everything followed protocol. Maria approached the podium to accept the Grand Star of Unity for humanity's contribution to Galactic. She wore formal diplomatic attire and had practiced her speech for weeks. As she took the award and looked out at the assembled crowd, she saw thousands of beings, representing thousands of worlds, all sitting in neat, organized rows. It looked like every other formal ceremony she'd attended in her diplomatic career. Boring, stiff, the kind of event where everyone was thinking about what they'd rather be doing. She made a decision. It was probably not a great decision. It would definitely break protocol. But Maria had never been great at following rules when following them meant missing out on joy. She pulled out her phone and sent a quick message. Then she cleared her throat and approached the microphone. "Thank you for this incredible honor," she began. "6 months ago, I invited you all to a wedding in Brooklyn because I didn't know how to explain what joy was. You showed up with measuring equipment and research protocols, ready to study happiness like it was a science experiment." Polite laughter rippled through the audience. People were listening. "But here's what I learned," Maria continued. "Joy isn't something you study, it's something you experience. And right now, we're all sitting here in this beautiful chamber, wearing our fancy clothes, being very serious and official. And yeah, this is important. But you know what else is important? Living. Actually experiencing the joy we've spent 6 months spreading across the galaxy." She signaled toward the back of the chamber. The doors opened. Carlos walked in, carrying his DJ equipment. Behind him came a small army of humans carrying speakers, lights, and everything else needed for an impromptu dance party. "So here's what's going to happen," Maria said as confused murmurs spread through the audience. "We're going to turn this awards ceremony into a party. Right here, right now. Because if we've learned anything over the last 6 months, it's that joy is too important to save for later. So who's with me?" For a moment, nothing happened. The grand chamber was silent. Maria wondered if she had made a massive mistake. She might have just destroyed her diplomatic career by turning the most important ceremony in the galaxy into a party. Then something unexpected happened. The Chancellor of the Galactic Council stood up. They were a dignified being from a species Maria didn't recognize, covered in elegant silver scales that caught the light. The Chancellor looked at Maria, looked at the DJ equipment being set up, and then, without a word, walked down from their seat toward the center of the chamber. "Let us dance," the Chancellor declared. Carlos, blessed with the instincts of a DJ who knew when to seize a moment, dropped the perfect track. The bass hit. The lights began to pulse, and chaos erupted in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. The Chancellor, it turned out, was an excellent dancer. Their species, despite looking dignified and formal, had extremely flexible spines. Within seconds, the leader of the Galactic Council was breakdancing in the center of the chamber while thousands of aliens watched in shock, then cheered, then joined in. Maria laughed as the ceremony dissolved into a party, created harmonic resonances that synced with the music. The Chitter Collective formed patterns in the air, Eternals who had lived for let loose with an abandon they hadn't felt in centuries. Even the most serious, protocol-obsessed species found themselves moving to the beat. Appeared at Maria's side, their crystalline body already vibrating with the bass. "You broke every rule of formal ceremony procedure," they said. "I know," Maria said, watching the chaos unfold. "I'm probably in so much trouble." "Yes," agreed, "and it is wonderful. Come, let us join them." Hours later, when the impromptu party finally wound down, Maria found herself back at the podium. The grand chamber looked like a tornado had hit it. The formal seating arrangement was destroyed. Decorations were askew. The Chancellor's ceremonial robes were draped over a chair somewhere because they had gotten too warm while dancing. And every single being in the chamber was smiling, or whatever their species did to express happiness. "I think," said, standing next to her and looking out at the contented crowd, "we finally understand what you tried to teach us. Joy is not something to be scheduled or measured or optimized. It is something to be lived, something to be seized in the moment, even when it breaks protocol." Maria nodded. In the months since that first wedding reception, she had watched the galaxy transform. She had seen species who had forgotten how to play rediscover laughter. She had watched ancient feuds end on dance floors. She had seen beings who had spent their entire lives in pursuit of efficiency learn that sometimes the most important thing you could do was waste time with people you cared about. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, beings were dancing. The joy index continued to climb, shattering records, exceeding projections, proving that happiness had no theoretical limit. Mental health improved. Cooperation increased. Life, across all of known space, became not just optimized but truly lived. And it had all started because one human ambassador couldn't explain fun and decided to show it instead. Nana would have been proud.